Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Laureli Shimayo, and this is MeWe Fairs for energizing body, mind, heart, and soul. We have events throughout the Northwest. We had our largest fair in Bellevue just last weekend with 92 booths, and we have many events online as well. This is our online panel. We have panels with different themes, and today's theme is healing childhood trauma. So there are 8 of us that are here today on the panel. We'll be introducing ourselves and talking about the topic, and then answering questions from the audience. It's a great opportunity for everyone to listen and learn, and we deeply appreciate those of you that are going to be willing to step in and ask us some questions. We do have the technology set up a little differently today so that your video cameras are off and you're muted until we bring you up here on the spotlight. Feel free to message us in chat if you have comments and questions. I think there's anything else first. I think, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and have practitioners introduce ourselves. Practitioners, what I suggest, if you're able to do this, talk about your work generally the first time around. Take a shorter time if you want, just a couple minutes or so. And then we're going to go around and talk about the theme. I imagine we'll probably do a bit of talking about the theme before we leap into questions. We'll kind of tune and see who's showing up. All right, well, maybe let's start off we'll go in the same order. So I think it was Dr. Joe and then Karen and then Angela. All right, go ahead, Dr. Joe.
Hi, everyone. Welcome tonight. I'm glad to have you here. I'm Dr. Joe, and I'm a holistic healer, somatic healer, women's coach, and yoga, meditation, mindfulness teacher. I'm also a psychologist, former psychologist, and I specialize in trauma. I've got over 20 years of experience. And I also have my own personal history of trauma, which I use to channel, and it allowed me to have a lot of compassion and empathy for people who struggle themselves. So I'm just glad to be here, very thankful to be here. And thanks. With that, I'll pass.
Thanks so much, Dr. Joe. Karen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming this evening. My name is Karen Coccia with KarenCoccia.com. I am a quantum healer, a multidimensional mentor, and a soul alignment coach. I'm trained and certified in a number of healing modalities. I'm a natural intuitive and a starseed, and I mainly work with clients in a one-on-one basis. I also have a year-long program I have launched, and my mission is to empower others to experience their power, all that is possible with their lives, with their bodies, from physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, and spiritual wellness. I connect energetically with clients and kind of take things maybe in a different route than some of the other ways you might have seen things handled, where I don't deal with things in a linear fashion, but step out of time. So things can be integrated and trauma can be removed from the energetic and everything. And so we work together to remove trapped emotions and collapse Akashic records and reset patterns and beliefs, and just really see what is possible for each and every one of you. So again, my name is Karen Coccia with KarenCoccia.com, and I'm looking forward to this evening's discussion.
Thanks so much, Karen. And we've got Angela, and I think after that we went to Henry.
Hello, my name is Angela Myer, and I am a clinical certified hypnotherapist. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years. I've been voted the best hypnotherapist for Salem, Oregon for the past 13 consecutive years. And I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm an author of the book, The Undetected Narcissist. Website is undetectednarcissist.com. Podcast is the same name. And I've worked with lots of people around trauma, childhood trauma, adult trauma, teenage trauma, you name it. I've worked in many, many different areas with people with different backgrounds, religions, cultural beliefs, all that stuff. So I'm very excited to be here today and excited to be working with these other amazing people that you have on this panel here. And I know everyone has all these great ideas and suggestions, and just I'm really happy to be here. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope everyone gets a lot out of it.
Thanks, Angela. I think we've got Henry and then Hannah, and then Jenn.
Hi, I'm Henry India Holden at henryindiaholden.com, and I'm a certified ecotherapeutic or eco-spiritual life coach. I'm also a tarotist, a spiritual guide, and metaphysical healer. And I work with people on everything and anything because I like to connect people with their divine wisdom or their inner wisdom or their higher self, depending. Different people have different names or words for that. And whatever needs to be healed, we work on. I also help people get from point A to point B, like they want to create something in their life, but something somehow gets in the way. Very often, what gets in the way of having the life you want or manifesting what you want, like a business or a vision of some sort, is trauma. I've had trauma myself. It wasn't my parents, it was my brother who forced me to say all the time that I'm stupid. And so then that created interesting things. And then how do you heal that? So one of the ways that I see healing that are the 6 steps of self-birthing. We can go back into the womb, visualizing it or telling it to ourselves, because not everyone has mental images, and literally speaking to ourselves in the womb and moving forward from there, and sort of revisiting and healing all the different phases in life in which our trauma manifested in whatever ways it did. So there's some work done to discover, what happened and how we were related to that trauma at that time, so that we can find the words. And so that's the work I do with people. I have a beautiful graph. You can do this work with yourself as well. You can start today to begin to heal your life.
Thanks so much, Henry. And here we got Hannah, and then Jenn, and then Lincoln.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah with Holistic Healing by Hannah. I'm a medical intuitive, and I help you connect with your body so you can reconnect to your inner child and hear the messages that your body and soul are trying to tell you. And so often what happens when we've experienced that trauma as a child is we disconnect from ourselves. So I help you achieve whatever your goal is in life by facilitating that reconnection.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Jenn.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a Dragon Energy Master and Reiki Master as well. I do help out with trauma healing. I've had my own traumas, a lot of childhood traumas that I've healed from. I worked with removing the traumas in people's bodies. And I also have just recently been working with the spirit drum to help facilitate that flow through, just kind of break up the stuck areas. So, we dwell deep into a session and we have such amazing results. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Jenn. Lincoln.
I started as a mountaineer when I was a kid, and then I got into physics and science and got a degree. And then I did a lot of cultural traveling, and then I got into neurofeedback, brain training, neuropsychology, and that led to hypnotherapy, and now I'm a clinical counselor. So I really learn. I always learn from experience, and I'm really down on school and pedagogy. So my clients are amazing. Well, I'm not saying they're amazingly able, but they're amazingly experienced, and I get to learn from them. So it's a mind-bending trip through trauma and society, culture, childhood, gender. I think everybody should be a therapist, and a parent. So that's where I'm at.
And I'm Laureli Shimayo. I'm an intuitive eye reader, body psychology coach, and matchmaker. I read your eyes, like I believe we all read each other's eyes, and I read your soul. I use a set of archetypes to help you better understand who you are, your soul, your journey, your lessons, your gifts, your purpose. And I answer questions about career, relationships, matchmaking, all kinds of topics, all kinds of applications. Our natural talents can get in our own way with their own lessons, and that's related to how we heal as well. I love to help people with truing up to be more honoring of themselves, of their journey, and make choices of who they connect with and what they do to support them on that journey. I'm excited to be here tonight with all of us together to talk about this theme. It's been a big personal journey for me too, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. And at the same time, I'm nervous and I have energy in my body being here for this conversation too. Yeah, well, let's see. Let's go around and talk about the theme. So some of us started talking about it a little bit, and let's talk more about the theme. Maybe I'll mention too. You might be thinking about a question that you might ask us. You might know you have questions bubbling up. It's a big experience, usually just being here for this kind of conversation. The things that we have in our lives start vibrating, right? Coming to the surface, whether or not you ask a question today. Please be supportive of everyone here. Please experience the support of everyone here. We're all here for each other. Yeah, so I'll put information in the chat again about how you can ask a question tonight if you'd like to do that. There's a price, it is sliding scale. I put the practitioner's information in the chat, and I'll go ahead and put that in the chat again too. And practitioners, if there's a special you want me to include, I don't have specials from everyone. Feel free to give me those. You can put them in the chat yourselves too. Yeah, so let's just start winding around the same order. And after we go around once, feel free, practitioners, you can jump in and share more also. Share more again. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Joe.
Okay, one of the things that I talk about is how trauma lives in our body. And maybe, I mean, like you mentioned, Laureli, the energy in the body right now, I noticed that my heart is beating a little bit faster. And so one of the things I invite you to do is sort of do a little body scan and notice if you have any extra tension in the muscles, if maybe your heart is beating a little bit faster, if you have tightness in the chest, palms sweaty, anything like that, that might indicate that you have a little bit of tension or energy going on too. Because where our trauma does live in our body, in our tissues, in our bones, in our fascia. So one of the things that I do in my work is I help people locate and externalize the trauma so that they can release it from their body. So, as you're thinking about trauma and things that you may have survived, you might think about how it has impacted your body as well as your psyche. And that's one thing that I think we forget about. And in terms of healing trauma, I think using somatic methods such as yoga can be very, very helpful because it allows you to become embodied. I know for me, I was very disembodied and I lived sort of from my neck up, and I was not in touch at all with what was happening in my body. And one of the ways of healing is to get in your body, but that can be frightening because then you start to experience some of the symptoms of trauma. So that's one of the things that I like to address. And I invite you to start paying attention to body signals and cues, which could bring up, and it also allows you to get in touch with your feelings. Because a lot of times, when I ask clients, how are you feeling? Or what do you feel when you're thinking about this or bringing up this topic? And they really don't know. And that's not really surprising because we detach from our feelings as well. And then I might ask, what do you notice in your body? And at first they may not know, and they may not notice anything. After a while, they might say, well, there's a little tension in my back, or I notice that there's tightness in my chest. And then I can say, what do you think, that's about? Or what emotion might that be signaling for you? And that's a way to get in touch with what your feelings are as well. So that's just one thing that I wanted to mention about trauma and how it lives in your body. And it's not just talking about the experiences, but it's also sort of digesting them and then processing and being able to let them out. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Joe. Karen?
Hello again, everyone. So a couple of things I wanted to mention right off the bat. Laureli spoke to it, Dr. Joe spoke to it. This is the container where right off the bat, because we're setting the intention to talk about this, a lot of stuff might start to surface. And even if you're not the one to ask the question, you might receive some healing codes that are going to help you along with the process just by listening in. So I welcome everyone to kind of be in that space of reception and just being open and listening to what is said, because there could be some really profound healing options, some keys to come through just in the discussion even tonight. The second thing I want to make sure to address is that if you are here and you have had trauma, you're not alone. 2/3 of children report having had some kind of trauma by the age of 16. So you're not alone. And we hear you, and everyone on this panel is here, from a supportive place and to listen. And yeah, so I wanted to mention that. And I know Henry spoke a little bit about the method that they use with going through the womb. And I wanted to mention that sounds like a beautiful process. I do something a little bit similar that I wanted to also introduce, in that, again, because in my experience, time is not linear. We experience time linearly as humans, but when we can kind of step into our multidimensional self, we can actually step out of time. And so you can speak to whatever age holds that trauma, and you can have conversations with that aspect of yourself, and you can say whatever it is that you needed to say to them, or what you wished you had done back then, and you can work through it, and you can close that with your mind, you can close that energetically, and it helps move into a space of healing that has absolutely tremendous results. So just wanted to mention that to you, because this is a really heavy topic. And so I wanted to make sure to offer that as an option to even, try that out on your own. As Dr. Joe mentioned, trauma is held in the body, and it's held in so many ways. In my experience, in my healing practice, I see the trauma having folded, and it's almost like it gets swallowed up and repeated in the body. And it can show up in so many different ways, with the body malfunctioning in certain ways, with pain that's showing up, with dis-ease showing up, so many different ways that the body is responding to this trauma. And then you have your emotional body that's responding to this. And then you have your mental body that's also going to be responding and potentially replaying the trauma. So this is really a multi-layered conversation. And so I look forward to really diving deeper with all of you tonight.
Thanks so much. One thing I just want to mention, it's just coming up in the chat. We do have a lower rate for BIPOC folks as a step of making reparations. I'm happy to talk about that offline. My experience is that there is an enormous amount of systemic racism in this culture where I live and practice, and I'm doing my part to undo that, to change that, to create an equal and fair world. And one of those steps is by offering lower prices to BIPOC folks. Yeah, happy to discuss that offline a little bit in the chat. And yeah, it's all learning and growing together and seeing what the best way is to honor everyone. All right, let's see. So I think Angela is next. Go ahead, Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Myer, and this subject I think is just incredible, because we can have 7 generations of trauma stored in our DNA and not even be realizing that you have your mom's trauma on her side of the family, you have your dad's trauma on his side of the family. And that's a lot to take in. And as Karen was saying, I look at it as we're like onions. We have all these layers and layers and layers of us. And when she was talking, she was talking about a lot of stuff about NLP. It's called neuro-linguistic programming. And in NLP, let's say you have a childhood trauma at a certain age, that childhood trauma part of you still thinks you are 8 years old or 6 years old or 7 years old. It doesn't know you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. It has no idea. And so when you quiet the mind and slow down the brainwave patterns and go in, you literally can have a conversation with that child. And there are different modalities. There's a modality called IFS, Internal Family Systems. So sometimes you can have a wounded part of you that is really, really the protector. One could be a guardian, one could be a people pleaser. And those are like the spokesperson. And sometimes there's one major one, but there could be 10 fragmented parts attached to that one childhood memory. Okay. And so what's really neat is you can go in, you can talk to that wounded childhood part of you. You can tell them, hey, this is how old I am. This is my timeline. Look at my timeline. And you can literally go out and show them all these life experiences that you've had. Then what you can do is you can promote them. You can tell them, you know, this is what's holding me back, but this is where I want to go. And this is the biggest thing I want to tell everyone to get, that when we have conflicting parts, those sometimes can seem like parts that are sabotaging you, but they're really not, because they always has a positive underlying intent. It's to protect you. It's to keep you safe. It's so you don't get wounded again or hurt again. So they're really there to help you. But the thing is it doesn't serve you anymore as you get older. It served you when you were little, but now that you're an adult, it's not serving you. So what's really great is you can do what you call a parts integration, where you have that part come together. Instead of it being at odds with you, it comes together. And then you can do what they call timeline therapy, where you take that part out into the future and you show it what we're going to do together as a whole. Instead of separate, this is what we're going to do together. And it's a really amazing process. There's so many other different processes that I know about healing childhood trauma, but that one that Karen was talking about is what she's, was discussing. I think the other biggest thing before we move on is looking into your family history. Do you have a history of trauma bonding? Does your family have a history of trauma bonding? And really looking at it, and going back and asking questions, what was it like for your mom growing up? What was it like for your dad, your grandparents? And you can literally start to see a pattern, a cycle sometimes of abuse. There could be verbal abuse, there could be, physical abuse, there, could be psychological, emotional abuse. But you can start to see those patterns, because when you start to see the patterns in your family member, then you can look at yourself and really recognize, do you have some of those patterns in you? And if you do, then you can start to change them, and you can start to, repair it, or you create a new pattern that you want to have. But when it comes to childhood trauma, everyone on this planet is going to experience some form of either direct or indirect trauma. So direct trauma is you get in a car accident, but indirect trauma is you witness that car accident, but you have nightmares for weeks after it because of what you saw. So there are two different ways that people, can get traumatized. And I hope everyone gets a lot out of today, because we have a lot to talk about. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Angela. All right, great. Is Henry next?
Yeah, this is really more exciting and more affecting than I anticipated. I just had the other day the launch for my tarot deck, and so I've been taking a little bit of time off, and now I'm back to work for this session, and I'm just noticing, so I hadn't really prepared emotionally how it's going to impact me. So I'm not sure where you all are, you 60 some participants here. So sometimes I've noticed with clients that, excuse me, just even talking about that we're going to be talking about trauma will trigger the neural networks in the brain. So neural pathways that are neural networks will trigger certain neural networks of trauma. So if you're experiencing that right now, if you're starting to feel like, there's been a little talk about that, there's one very easy thing that you can do right this very moment as you're at home listening. You can take some slow breaths and let them out, and that raises your parasympathetic tone. It slows down all the responses, slows everything down. It's like the brakes in the body. So if you take, like, let's say 3 slow breaths, like not hyperventilating, but when you make them slow, they tend to be longer. I think that is going to help you right away to get a little more grounded and get a little more feeling good in your body. I certainly have been doing that. I want to briefly share a graph that, so I can't share. No, one participant can share at a time. It says here, okay, it was just slow. Okay, so this graph right here, I'm going to put a link in the chat how you can get this graph. So it talks about 6 steps of how to self-birth, and this has been touched upon, that time, like the past is not in the past. So I just wanted to show it to you, and I'm going to stop the share. So like I said, we're going to put the link to that. It's on my website, and you can get that, and you can just screenshot it, and that's how you end up having this graph. So shoot, now I totally forgot what I was saying. Okay. Well, I was talking about neural networks, and I was talking about how they affect us and how things are not as linear as they seem, because the past is not in the past, because our brain is always now. Like, now is what's happening. Now is what's happening. And everything that's ever happened in your life is there now. So why is not everything rushing in simultaneously? Because there are preferences. What fires together, wires together. That's one of the famous words, one of the famous phrases about neural networks. So what fires together, what fires together, wires together. So when you're not thinking about something in a long time, it becomes less acute. When you're not exposed to something in a long time, the memory of the exposure becomes less acute. But that doesn't mean that it cannot become acute again. So when certain things come together, like for example, seeing a photo of my brother will trigger neural networks that are dormant most of the time. So I try not to look at them. I have forgiven him. I love him in a universal divine love kind of way, but from afar, in order to remain safe, which I recommend to anyone and everyone. If somebody is hurting you and traumatizing you now, it's really great to just step away from that, and you are certainly allowed to do that. But that goes into something that's like a little bit of a tangent. I tend to do that, go a little bit on tangents. So when you are going through what's happened in your life, it's good to have a guide, so you're not going into the rabbit hole. And if you're going through a self-birthing, that's when what you're doing is, instead of dealing with the neural networks and also, all the memories that are stored in the body, rather than dealing with that right now, you're taking a different approach. The approach you're taking is that you're adding new neural networks. So whether you're visualizing something or saying something to yourself fervently, or if you're experiencing something in real life that something's happening, like somebody's talking gently to you, for example, all of these things are recorded in your brain. So you can self-birth, and that becomes neural networks as well. So then when you're traumatized, or when your trauma is triggered, when you think about maybe your birth parents or somebody who has harmed you in your childhood, even later on, you can choose to say, yes, I'm acknowledging that, I remember this, and then you can think of this beautiful self-birthing process that you developed, or that you went through. And so every time your life pings the trauma you intentionally can ping the new neural networks that you created by creating these experiences for yourself through the self-birthing process and also through other processes. So basically, that's one of the ways that I know that we can affect our past and affect our trauma. You may have heard this before, that it's been said that you can rewrite your past. And that is kind of what's being talked about there. And so that's an amazing approach. It takes a little bit of work because you have to get to the place where you're willing to hold yourself, where you're willing to be tender with yourself and do this self-birthing, where you're willing to say these good and sweet and beautiful things that you didn't hear if you didn't, or that to counterbalance and give you a new option, a new choice, instead of like my brother saying, you're stupid. So there's another neural network that I've developed, which is, that makes me want to cry. You are deeply wise. And so when this you're stupid comes up, like when I make a mistake or something, boy, there is that voice. And then I'll use it like a pinball that pins against that particular ball. And then that is the trigger for bouncing over to you're deeply wise. And so this is how that works. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you and seeing how I, myself, and everyone else here can help you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Henry. All right, let's see. Maybe was it Hannah and then Jen and then Lincoln? We're just going around. So everyone just has some context. We're going around. Practitioners are sharing a bit more about the theme, and then we will be available to answer questions. It's great if you're willing to ask us a question similar to the way you would in a private session with us. It gives you an opportunity to get feedback from all of us. It's brief. You do get feedback from probably all of us, and everyone gets to learn from the answers that you receive and from being with you in the process of you asking and receiving. It looked like a few people maybe wanted to share some things. We have people ask questions at these experiences. We don't just share our experiences generally. You're welcome to share in the chat about your experiences and get seen and heard by the panel and by the whole community here. I'm fine to have some dialogue about that in the chat, everyone. But yeah, so we do a format on the panel where it's the panelists and then the people that are paying to ask questions as who gets on stage. Thanks. All right, so we've got Hannah and then Jen and then Lincoln.
I just want to say that I love just what everybody has shared so far and just such a beautiful community that's here with everyone. And so my background, at least right now, what I'm offering in my business is medical intuition. And in almost every session that I do, we end up going back and talking to your inner child. Some piece of you that didn't feel heard, that didn't feel respected, that didn't feel loved. And as Dr. Lincoln mentioned earlier, big T versus little t trauma, when we look at it through the lens of our adult experiences, a lot of times we can discount the trauma or the effect that it had on our younger selves or on children in general. So we go back, I guide you into connecting with your body and feeling where that emotion, that energy is stuck so that we can release it, we can bring it to the surface. And that doesn't mean that we have to relive the experience, but we bring it to the surface so that it can be lifted and moved out of your energy field because it doesn't have to stay in there. And in line with that, something that's true for me, because a lot of my experiences have come through becoming the type of practitioner that I needed to assist me. I'm sure a lot of us feel the same way. But I had this very core belief that forgiving meant that I forgot what happened. And it wasn't actually until my husband pointed out that I wasn't nearly upset enough about certain experiences that had happened, as he remembered every time in the past that I had been upset about situations with certain relationships in my life. And I would just be like the normal amount of upset, whatever that is for you. And he would kind of then go back and tell me all the other times that had happened. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. But for me, that was a safety mechanism that I had built up. And so if I forgave somebody, I forgot, it was erased from my present mind so that I would just keep repeating it. And we don't have to live that way anymore. So by connecting to those pieces of us and letting them be heard and remembering that we can remember the lesson not to touch the stove, right? But the stove is hot. We don't have to keep touching the hot stove. The same can be said with our emotional and energetic experiences as well. And a lot of us formed, hyper independence. We learned that we couldn't depend on other people around us. And so this is my invitation to everyone watching, is reach out for help. Take that first step and ask somebody to help you with some of these experiences. Everyone here is here because they actually genuinely care about what happened. They want to support you through what you're experiencing, what happened to you, and just start rewriting your story for yourself. And with that, I will let the next person go.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Jenn.
Hi, I'm Jen. And, this is amazing that we're all here together. We're in a safe space, a safe container here, and we're all held. When I learned with my traumas that I went through as a child, was some pretty traumatic post-traumatic experience. I developed PTSD, so many different things that I healed from. And, the biggest thing that I learned is like, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. No matter what you feel, it's valid. It's 100% valid. So we are in a space here of non-judgment, and we're here to hold you, to help you, hold space for you, to help you to grow. A lot of the things that I used, I turned to the Munye Key rites. I became a Reiki master. I'm a Tao hands practitioner. So really using different tools, the body, mind, spirit, like most of us all here has addressed that, is that you need to do each part of yourself. What I've discovered with the healings that I've had and working with the clients is they're like almost like little crystals that become kind of trapped in your body. And you have to address that issue and that, be willing to be okay. So, with some of the clients I had, we'll get to a point and they're not ready. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up. Just realize that you are right where you need to be and how far that you've come. So be very gentle with yourself. Doing this type of work requires, knowing how validated you are, knowing how loved you are, knowing, your intrinsic value. You're amazing, you're loved, and you're held. Now, some of the tools I use, I work with crystals. I work with the Tao calligraphies, and then just recently, out of Canada, I actually got this beautiful spirit drum, and it was made by a shamanic company, and it's just been amazing. I've been working with people with traumas, doing the blessings, and the drumming has been completely amazing with them because they went, through, it helped them to move through. When I'm working with clients, they'll just start crying, and when I'm drumming, and, I also use soul language as well. Some people might know it as light language, and so I work with that as well. And, it's an all-encompassing healing. And, we're here, and the common theme that most of us have is like we, as humanity, most of us have been traumatized, lived through trauma, or we know someone who has, so we have that connection with each other. Just know, like I said, we've done all kinds of amazing things here, working with the candles, doing some past lives. I also have a Tao deck that I use, and it's just, amazing. And so, just know you're validated, your experience is real, and we're here to help however we can. Each and every one on this panel has amazing experiences, and we all together are pretty cool. So, for me, what I've learned, working with generational traumas, doing a lot of forgiveness, that's where I started, is being able to forgive. And, the hardest part that I learned was, well, it was tough for a while. Well, they did this to me. This is what I experienced. It was real, but I'm not ready to forgive them. I don't want to talk to them, and I hadn't wanted to forgive them. So, what I ended up doing is just writing letters and just writing things down. And eventually, you're good, you forgive, and you don't have to face the person. You can do it on a spiritual level. You can talk to their souls, and when you're ready to move forward, it'll happen. Now we're here to gently move you through, help to remove the blockages and the traumas in the body, and just know that you're loved, you're held, and you're going to be in a safe space. So, I love you all and value you all, and I thank you all for being here. And realize how brave you are. Each and every panelist and each and every participant that's here, that you've taken the step forward and you're here. So thank you for being able to be here and just showing up. And sometimes with the traumas, just showing up is the first step.
Thanks, Jen. Dr. Lincoln's next.
I have my website is mindstrengthbalance.com. And I have a blog, you can sign up for it, it's free. And every week I have a kind of, I've made this rhythm that every week I take a different approach to issues. And this week, I've been thinking of freedom versus safety. And so I'm kind of, at least from my point of view, reframing the trauma issue in terms of asking people, how do you fit in that dichotomy? Is this experience that you're dealing with something that's freeing you, or is it giving you safety? Because there's this odd thing that we hold on to our identity because it's safe, and we can hold on to our victim identity because it makes us feel like we know what's going on, and we've been trained and habituated to think that way. And then we kind of regret the freedom we don't have, or it can be the other way where we're too aggressive and too risk inviting, and we don't achieve the freedom we need because we're on a different mode. So I ask people to consider, why are you holding on to this? Is it serving you? And that's kind of the story that you ask people with post-traumatic stress, is like, okay, it served you once and it probably protected you. Is it serving you now? And maybe it is serving you now in some ways. And maybe that's part of the confusion. That's my clients often, they don't know exactly where they are in this situation of releasing what's bothering them and finding something new. Because to release what's bothering you, even if it's trauma, means you have to go into a space that's often confusing, where you don't know who you are and you don't know how to react, and you feel vulnerable. So you may recoil back into a state of defense. So that's kind of the topic I throw out in terms of trauma. Where are you on the spectrum of taking risks and finding new freedoms versus staying in a realm of safety and remaining who you have built yourself to be? And ultimately you have to be your own friend and distinguish the positive from the negative forces. And some of that just involves talking. But as a lot of people here, we use trance and we use altered states. We use channeling, intuition. I use hypnosis, and that's generally what I do. I have to listen to your story, and you have to tell your story, and then we try to find out what's underneath it, what's supporting your story. It's usually not a question of solving the problem. It's usually a question of dissolving the problem. So that's my short answer to the question no one asked. Okay, next.
We did.
I just had one comment.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just had one comment. I agree with you, Lincoln, but I wanted to mention too that with PTSD, there are actually there are changes in the brain. So in terms of like the responses and some of the hypervigilance and the fight or flight reactions and stuff, that is due to some changes that happen in the brain after a trauma. So some of the reactions are actually not necessarily within your control, at least until there's a lot of work done with the trauma. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, it's great listening to everyone share. There's just so much that I keep thinking of, so many things, remembering so many things about my own experiences and healing and things I've heard and things I want to share. I mean, one thing that occurs to me right there as you say that is I want everyone to know it's not your fault. Right? Anything that happened, anything you experienced is not your fault. And ways that you might have put yourself in situations where you re-traumatize yourself, it's not your fault. Your trauma is leading you there. It's not your soul. And for me, the biggest part of doing this healing is forgiving ourselves. So one thing that I often have, that I've done, and that I recommend often for clients, is that they get some small, cuddly something. And really, I'm using this to heal myself, right? To hold myself. So it's our opportunity to heal and hold and love ourselves, our imperfect selves that are so perfect in being imperfect. So I wanted to speak a little bit to layers of trauma, right? We usually have so many layers, and I'm not sure who it was. It might have been Henry, not sure who it was. Someone mentioned about what fires together, wires together. So whatever we experienced as kids, it gets wired up in our brains with so many other things, including love. So many of us inadvertently, we don't intend to, we go seeking the same kinds of experiences that were so painful, because that is also associated with love for us. Because often as kids, a lot of our trauma happens with people that we loved and cared about. A part of our journey of unwinding trauma is layers and peeling layers. Right? So those of us on the panel that know we have trauma, right? We've done lots of peeling, and I know certainly for me, there's tons more layers to go. A few notes. I want to say that for those of us that have trauma, right? And I love the idea of the capital T, like little t, there are different sizes of trauma. And it's all about context, right? It affects us differently. Various situations, well, we end up being more sensitive. So different situations can, we can react more strongly than other people. It doesn't make sense to other people sometimes. We get, triggered or reactive or all kinds of things in ways that we go into protecting ourselves when it happens later as an adult. So people don't understand us, and sometimes they can get upset with us and write layers of trauma that we recreate up for each other. I want to mention too, it's not just a situation that we're in or a behavior that we're around or a physical experience we have. Sometimes it's just the energy of people. So in reading people's eyes, I experienced that we're all able to recognize these differences and similarities in each other. And so I experience trauma from certain types of people in my life. When I'm around people now as an adult that have similar energy in their eyes, related stuff comes up in me that came up in me as a child. And I consciously know that now and can think about that because of the way I read people's eyes. And I just want you all to know this can happen. Sometimes you might be more attracted to someone, scared of someone, you're drawn to them even though it's a scary pattern and an old pattern for you, all kinds of things. It's where we're all picking up so much about each other, and it impacts our experience now. I also want to mention too that a big part of my journey of healing, and for lots of other people, is that we don't remember consciously. We don't know in our mind what happened. Our bodies certainly hold on to so much. And if we follow the pathway of our bodies, that's one way that we can find and unwind the trauma. Accepting our experience is, to me, one of the most important things. Accepting that we sense or feel or intuit something and we don't know in our minds. And we may even remember something that has morphed and changed as the way that we attempt to remember it. So part of what's been so important for me is that I believe myself. I believe my body. I accept my experience. I honor myself the best I can and honor what seems to be the most true of what I experienced, even though I don't know. And again, that can be harder, and that other people around us might have trouble supporting us because we don't have that knowing that Western American culture, United States culture has come to rely on. Yeah, so those are some bits from me. Maybe I'll say I really didn't recognize so much of my trauma just until about 2009, when I finally did a lot of my own personal work. Lots of sexual trauma, psychological trauma. Yeah, and I studied with somatic psychotherapists to work on healing myself and learn lots of tools. And so those are some of the tools that I bring to others, which reminds me I should read out loud the fine print just so that it's here just in case. So while lots of us have training and some of us may practice professionally, we're here on this panel not as those, well, I'll let each practitioner stand for themselves. Here's the general fine print. By participating in this event, the attendee understands that we, most of us, are not therapists or medical doctors, not giving therapeutic or medical advice. The attendee further agrees that information gained from this event is for educational purposes only. Please seek allopathic medical attention or mental health support if needed. The attendee indemnifies MeWe fairs and practitioners from any results related to the application of these educational materials in practice, just so that we're all right in this liability world are safer. All right. Well, so practitioners, anything else you want to say about the theme before we leap in to answer questions? And I think that someone was paying to ask a question, so we might have that coming up soon. And I haven't looked at the chat in the last few minutes.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
It just sort of floated around in my head, and it happens every time I come to these events. When I present myself as a therapist, or when someone presents themselves as a therapist, we tend to get people who want to see us as therapists and them as clients, us as saviors or wisdom keepers or pathfinders, and them as people who need wisdom keepers and saviors and pathfinders. But one of the reasons I like this event, and I think it's somewhat definitive of this event or events like this, is that the people who come here are not looking for doctoring. And so when Laureli says we're not doctors, there's a feedback to that. It means you're not looking for doctors too. And I think that's really empowering. That's really why I'm here as a therapist, because I like talking to people who they're curious and they're not helpless in the way that someone seeking an expert has conferred some of their power to someone else. So I like to encourage you to, well, it's always you got to get powerful if you're going to do your own change. So I just appreciate people who are here as being out of the box and being independent. And I think you're one step ahead of somebody who hasn't taken that cloak of authority. That's all.
Thanks, Lincoln. Yeah, practitioners, anything else you can share? And if you have paid to ask a question of the panel, please let me know in the chat. If you let me know back there, I'm scrolling back through, please let me know again, and we'll aim to get to whoever's in line first. Yeah, practitioners, anything else you want to share? And maybe we answered it a little bit, and there were a little bit in the chat. I'd say all of us are available to do private sessions. So if you're interested in someone on the panel, some of us have specials that I'm posting in the chat too. I'll put all of our information in again shortly. Practitioners, if you don't have and Henry, I'll come to you in a moment. Practitioners, if you don't have a special listed, feel free to give me a special and I'll put it in the chat. So it looks like Henry and Karen have some things to share. Go ahead.
I just love so much what you said, Dr. Lincoln. Just loved it so much. It is true that, well, let me not put it this way. I don't have a degree in psychotherapy. And so whatever you learn in psychotherapy, in the course of getting that degree, I did not learn that. Maybe I've learned some of it. I wouldn't know because I haven't taken that course. And so I don't know what I don't know. And at the same time, what I can tell you is that people's lives have been saved by therapists, by people who can call themselves doctors. Lives have been saved. Lives have been saved by psychiatrists who have prescribed drugs that changed someone's life, that changed someone's brain in ways that their lives became good when before they weren't. And I also know that I have clients who tell me I would never see a therapist. I would never do this. So I'm seeing you instead. So I hear this a lot. And I hear a lot people saying 20 years of therapy didn't do as much for me as one session with you. So why I'm saying that is not at all in order to say that what we're doing is better. It's just to support what Dr. Lincoln said, that there's different modalities and there's different ways of going about it. And if you're here already, then the traditional way may not be what you're looking to do, And then you've come to the right place, because we are not traditional. Even Dr. Lincoln is not traditional, as he has said himself. And so I think that when you work with people all the time and you help people all the time, and that this is your lifeblood, and this is the thing that you're doing. I mean, nobody here is getting rich. No, nobody here is has some master plan of taking advantage of anything. Everyone here is, I dare say, out of love. And the different modalities are different ways of translating love into healing. And that's what's available to you here. This is the way I see it, and that's what I wanted to add. So thanks so much, Dr. Lincoln, for adding that.
Yeah, thank you. And Karen's got something.
I've got a couple of things I wanted to tie into what Henry said, what Dr. Lincoln said, what Dr. Joe said, what other people are saying, kind of just want to bounce around in this energy here a little bit. So first, kind of going on what Dr. Lincoln was saying, like each and every one of us is our own expert in ourselves. And what works for some people doesn't work for other people. And so no matter what path you take, being your own advocate, in my personal opinion, is the most important thing. Following the path that feels right and true to you. Because yes, there are so many different approaches to healing through whatever it is you want or need to or are ready to heal and focus on and move through. I also wanted to mention, because we are so individual, and I, with my entire being, believe so strongly that anything is possible, and that we are so incredibly powerful as individuals, that if we believe and if we focus on healing whatever it is that we're healing on. Louisa Hay has the book, You Can Heal Your Life, right? I mean, there is a way to heal basically every single thing that's ever come into existence. And there are probably just as many approaches to healing whatever that is as there is to whatever that is, right? So I would lovingly like to just mention that if you plant it in your head that it's going to take X, Y, and Z to get through this, then it's going to take X, Y, and Z to go through this. If you are open to, I'm going to be open to what comes, and I'm going to heal this, and I'm going to get myself to the other side, then that is what you are going to do, because it's about the power of belief. It's about that intention. And if you're holding a belief that you can't heal something, you are absolutely right. No matter what you do, you will not heal it. But if you are open to healing things, I have actually firsthand witnessed clients healing themselves. And although I call myself a healer, I'm not doing the healing work. And anyone who's had a session with me who's here tonight can attest to this. Every single time somebody says, thank you for what you've done, I say, thank yourself. I'm just here to highlight the path on what you're doing to heal. And I have watched huge transformations happen in what they are willing to walk through and what they are willing to do. So it doesn't have to be a lifelong process. You never have to be stuck. It's a choice that then takes the tenacity and finding the right path for you. So I just wanted to offer that up.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Yep. Oh, Jen, go ahead.
What I think is really important, like what they said, is also, it's like a marriage almost. When I went through the child sexual trauma and the different traumas that I went through, what worked for me is, finding a really good therapist that I vibe with. So, the one that I find, he was cool. He had a yurt, he trained with Carl Jung, so, he had so many different things. We worked on out of the box things, just being, knowing what it is that you want in a therapist, to be able to help you out. I did that. And then I started really getting into the spiritual side and really tapping into that. I became a MeWe practitioner, Reiki master. I learned through that. And then just really doing the drumming and the different things like that, and then just learning, about myself and becoming more comfortable in my body, knowing, picking up patterns, recognizing it, like stress heal, I was a stress eater. So recognizing, okay, this is something, and not, and working through that, be willing to face my shadows and start to really deep, dive in. And so that's what's really helped with me, the crystal healings, the blessings, met many amazing healers along the way that has helped me totally transform my life. I had PTSD and anxiety, and by doing both, my PTSD was gone. I don't have those. They taught me how to feel comfortable in my body, the healers, and I the therapist and different people, so that I knew when a response was going to come, and we knew how to shut it off like that. So it's been an amazing path here to help people. I also am going to be working on my doctoral degree as well. So master's, doctoral degree. I worked in a dual diagnosis facility. I do specialize in helping people with grief, anxiety, and addictions, which, most of, and this is my personal opinion, it's not medical science or fact, most of the people that I've experienced working with that had addictions came from a trauma. What happened to them, they weren't validated. That was what they felt that they needed to reach out and do. And that is okay, because that is a choice they made. So I was able to, where I was at in the dual diagnosis facility, as a counselor's assistant, I was able to go ahead and help them, talk with them. We were allowed to actually share our experiences in the groups. So, we led some groups. It was pretty amazing. And I was allowed to bring in and do Reiki for them. I asked that we could bring some yoga teachers and movement, because, dancing and movement, it helps to work that traumas and things out of your body. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Laureli, and everybody here. I'm just learning so much from everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Dr. Joe.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on what Karen said, and a lot of us said that it's important that you find the right person to work with. And I tell the people that I work with that if it doesn't feel right after the first session, then I'm happy to refer you to someone else. And don't feel like just because you meet with me or with anyone that you have to keep seeing the person. I think sometimes, kind of like what you said, Lincoln, people think that we're on a different level, or that we're somehow greater than or something like that, but we're just humans like you, and we have the same kind of traumas. And I think that's what makes us good at this work. And so if it doesn't feel like a good fit, then certainly let us know that, and we're happy to refer you on, because it's really important to have a good fit. And sometimes you want to see more than one practitioner too. And I think that the other thing is that sometimes, like for myself, I mean, I've been in therapy for a long time, and I think of it as an ongoing process, because sometimes for a lot of people, I mean, I think of it as like self-study and growth, and there's always room for more. So it can be a journey that it doesn't necessarily have to be an endpoint, and there doesn't necessarily have to be sort of this I am healed kind of idea either. It can be more of an evolution and process, because sometimes with trauma, it does continue to kind of unfold. So that's just another way of looking at it too, because with the way that the brain is impacted by trauma, there are long-term consequences. So that's just another way to look at it. I want people to know that, just like with addictions, I mean, they're kind of a lifelong thing that people struggle with. So, some people go to meetings, and some people go to therapy, and some people do other practices like yoga, things like that, to keep themselves in a good state of mind. So that's another thing to think about too. Whatever keeps you grounded, whatever keeps you centered and feeling good about yourself.
Yep. State of mind, state of heart, state of body, state of spirit. Yeah. Whole. Sometimes I don't use the word healing. I use the word wholing, because really we're all reclaiming our wholeness. Yep. Henry's got something else too. And by the way, I don't think we have anyone in line at the moment to ask a question. If someone's wanting to ask a question of the panel, We love to receive questions, specific questions, just like you would sitting in a private session with us. It is recorded online. There are some things I'll say before we start answering the first question about how we can honor that. And there was something else I was going to say. Well, it's a way that we can be the most of service, and we all learn the most from the questions. And we do have a general question. Maybe after Henry, I'll mention it and we can speak to that while we're waiting for a specific question. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, something that's come up here between Dr. Joe and Dr. Lincoln is this idea of that when we're seeking help with whatever's going on with us, we may transfer our power to that person. This is very common. This is an old model that persists to this day, but it is changing. The idea of that you bring yourself to a doctor and you put yourself into their hands, and then they do their magic, quote unquote, and then you're better. And there's for actually since the 60s, at least since the 60s, with Carl R. Rogers, one of the preeminent psychoanalysts who was one of the pioneers and founding fathers of client-centered therapy, there has been this notion or this idea, this imagining in terms of mundus imaginalis, this imagining of that the person who's helping you is not here and then you're here. It's not that they have the answers and then you learn the answers. And once you learn the answers, thank you very much, I paid and I'm taking my answers home and I'm all better. This is the old school model and it persists because this is how it is with everything. You know, it's like things don't just something stops now, like we have gasoline cars today and tomorrow every car is battery. You know, it's like it becomes a mix. So we're still in this mix, but I think most people here on this panel, just the fact that they're attracted to coming here are probably beyond this, which is the idea is not that I have the answers that I then, after I listen to you, will deliver to you and that will make you better. It's more that I'm creating what I call an emergent space. This is not what Carl Rogers called it, but that's what he was doing. He created a space within which the other person's own inner wisdom wells up. And that inner wisdom is a tailor-made solution to that person, because only you know what's going on. Only you know what you truly need. I can't be a mind reader. No one can be a mind reader for you. And rather than 10 years down the line, I finally figured out what's quote unquote wrong with you. Now here's the solution. It's more that I'm creating this space with love and with skill and with knowledge and with intuition and all the tools and gifts I'm bringing so that you have a space in which can emerge what you need. And something Karen had said, and I see you nodding, that you know what's best for you. You know what you need. And we're here to facilitate. And regardless of what you do as a healer, that's what you're doing, you're facilitating. There are some people who don't see it this way. They have their reasons. I'm not going to argue against it because I don't believe in arguing. I believe in adding good rather than complaining about something I don't consider good. So again, client-centered therapy or client-centered working with people is to assume you have within you all that you need. You just may not know how to access it. And people like us are versed in helping you, creating a space and asking the questions and hearing what you're saying. Like, how often is it that somebody says something about themselves and then laughs it off and then moves on? And then if they didn't have someone like us, that would just like came and went. The opportunity came and went. But I'm going to hear that and I'm going to go, oh, you just said something really, really important that you laughed off. I'm not going to say that to the person, but I'm going to say, let's revisit that. And then usually the person goes, oh, that's so interesting. And off we go.
I just, before I go on to the next person, I just want to say sometimes someone knows what they need. Certainly overall, I would say like their body, their soul, right? Their being knows what they need. They may not consciously know what they need. And so we're co-creating and discovering that together. We've got Angela and then Jen and then Dr. Lincoln.
I love what everyone's been talking about here today. I think it's just fantastic information. And I wanted to share a little bit. So and some of you might relate. So when I was going through my process of recovering from physical and, sexual abuse, I remembered reading a great book called Healing the Shame That Binds You by Bradshaw. It was a great book. And in the book, I remember it talking about writing a letter to your abusers. Whoever hurt you, write them a letter and say what you need, just get it out. And the most important thing that I liked that it said was, regardless of their response, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you did it. And so when I did it to two of my, two people that I knew that abused me, one of them totally apologized about it, felt bad. Yes, it was wrong. The other one said, well, you got what you deserved. And yeah, you got what you deserved. And I was like, okay, thank you. Because to me, it doesn't matter what their response is. What matters is I had the strength and the courage to do it. The other thing that was really impactful for me is I was going to therapy, and I was also joining groups about, people survivors of sexual abuse. And the thing that I hated the most was the labels. The label that, oh, you're always going to be a survivor. You're always going to be a victim of this. And I didn't want that label. And I remember taking a weekend seminar for heart math, if any of you know what heart math is. And I sat down with the guy that was teaching it, and I told him my struggle. And my struggle was, I really don't want this label. I'm doing all this work. I've done this, and this. When am I gonna let that label go? And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to take 10 minutes and write down how those experiences made you who you are today. And so I wrote a huge list of things. And then when I sat down with him, he said to me, now, would you be who you are today without that experience? And I said, no. And he said, well, look at this. It's made you kinder, more compassionate, more forgiving. It's really made you a better person. You don't have to carry that label of being a victim anymore. You've already let it go. You don't have to listen to that. And so it really empowered me to realize that, you know what, I don't have to carry this like, it felt like a sign, like saying, you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. I didn't want to carry that sign. I didn't want to carry that burden. And so I just let it go. And it was so freeing to just let that thought go that was someone else planted in my brain. It wasn't something that I planted in my brain. It was what, someone else tried to plant in my brain. And so I just decided to pluck it out. And so that was really beneficial for me in that area. And I've noticed in the chat, some people have talked about EMDR. Yes, I highly recommend EMDR 100%. But I want to specify that it really does help to have the hand buzzers and the sounds in your ears. Why you want the hand buzzers is when you start to recall that traumatic memory, you can start to disassociate. You can start to check out. So the buzzers keep you in your body. They keep you grounded, okay? And then when it comes to the sound, it really also keeps you like saturated in the moment so you can literally clear it. Because if you're in an office and you hear someone's car go by, that can pull you out of that memory and it can totally disengage you. And so if you're doing EMDR, it's really good to have someone sometimes use the light bar that goes back and forth. Use the hand buzzers to keep you grounded, and also the sound. And EMDR is fantastic. I love it. I think it's a great tool for anyone that has PTSD, or even if you have memories that are repressed, but you've been told by family members that you were, you did experience some kind of trauma, some kind of abuse, EMDR will help open up those doors. But you really, really got to make sure that the person you're working with, you feel safe, and you got to have that rapport. Because as Dr. Joe was, saying, if you don't have that connection, that rapport with that person, you're really just wasting your time. And because you need to feel safe, you need to trust that person, and you need to know that that they've got you. And also you need to know that, they're professional and in what they're doing. So that's, some things about labels and about EMDR that really, does help. So I'll let, I think it's
Jen's
Dr.
next.
Lincoln is next, or Jen's
Yeah,
next.
Jen's next, and then Dr. Lincoln. Thanks, Angela. Dr. Angela.
Hi. So, one of the things I want to talk about, it's our inner child. And, as a child, we have our caregivers and people that we love and trust. And so, we have trouble forming relationships if we are traumatized at an early age. So, it could be personal and professional relationships, and you attract, like, I had to let go of the guilt and the shame and realizing, it wasn't my fault, these people that I was attracting, because I was attracting narcissists, and, like my therapist has told me, you're attracting, we did this amazing Mandela, and he had me write different things down, and he pieced it all together, because I'm like, why am I attracting the same person in a different body? And he actually traced it back to my father, and he said, you didn't get the love that you needed growing up. You were not validated. He was rarely there, so they, at that age, it became an ingrained pattern. And my inner child was completely neglected. And, it happens growing up too. So, it's pushed down to the side, and you just, I did a lot of self-discovery later on, and, healed from attracting those patterns. One of the things that I suggest doing would really help me a lot is writing a letter to your inner child, telling them, how much you love them unconditionally, just like you're talking to a little kid, and you want to talk to them about any situations or anything from their childhood you wish you could take back, or how you could change it, and that's what I did. And, how you're going to help them going forward. You can tell them how much you love them and how beautiful they are, things that we wish we would have heard from our parents and the people around us. I grew up around a lot of negative, abusive people. And, I went through 10 years of abuse from my father, to the point I developed traumatic amnesia, and not any therapist, regression person, it just locked. And they said, we're going to leave it because that's a safety. But you still feel that in your body. And without those memories connecting in, you're like, why am I angry when I see him? Because you just don't remember, but your body has that memory. So when I started doing the work, I worked with shamanic healers. I've worked with so many different people. And the Moonier key is like the rites of the initiation of the shaman. So that's, you're not a shaman, but it's the path. And so you're learning about, being an earth keeper and just all these different rites, and it helps you pull all this trauma out of your body and really focus in. But, the one thing that I learned through this trauma, like I said, it's not your fault. Like we've all said, we did what we could with what we had, and forgiving yourself, loving yourself. And the interesting thing, and I don't know what everybody's belief systems here, so I want to honor that. So what I've learned in my experience, I'm an empath as well. There's a lot of people that are, and we tend to, the ones of us that are like me, the saviors, the fixers, overly helpful. And I learned from my therapist that at that time, that being super overly helpful and a people pleaser is a trauma response. You just like, you want this attention and this love so bad, because I know for me personally, I didn't have it very much growing up as a child. My mom was abused as well. So, she couldn't connect in. And so it was just my grandparents, around. So for me, learning that the empaths attract the narcissist, and it's I've become an expert on narcissists and deep trauma and abuse from that. But, for us, just like remember, like that's where it starts, is your inner child, your first early memories. And your inner child is always with you. So, like I had to talk to my little girl self, and I wrote letters, and I bought myself flowers, and I did things to honor myself. I would say and I could see, in my mind's eye myself, because you want to kind of imagine that and connect with that age, that child, with whatever that you experienced. And so then you start talking, and I would say, I'm so sorry for what happened to you, and that I couldn't protect you, but here we are now, and I can keep you safe, and so just really having those experiences. And this book like really, really helped me as well. It's the Shadow Work, and it's by Danielle Massey, Facing Hidden Fears, Healing Trauma, and Awakening Your Dream Life. I just recently picked that up, and it's been amazing. Just be willing to, like we all said, the forgiveness is like the hardest thing to do in the world, because I didn't want to forgive, like I had said, but my therapist and the healers I talked to said, the amazing thing is that you're forgiving yourself. You're forgiving, you can let that go. You can let that trauma out of your body, because when you're forgiving them, you're not excusing what they did, because what they did was wrong. It's not okay. But you're doing this forgiveness, like she said, writing a letter, talking, picking up the phone and having a conversation, even if nobody's there. You're just talking it out in the mirror. You never actually have to face that person for you to let go and move forward. And it's, a lot of us, like I said, have experienced, traumas, sexual traumas, and it's wasn't your fault. Like you said, it's the biggest thing is our inner child says, well, why me? What did I do? What was wrong with me? Why did this happen? But you know what? It wasn't your fault. It was what happened to you. And you did what you could at the time to move forward and to heal yourself. So just, the biggest suggestion I would have is working with the guilt and the shame, and realize that's what I work with my clients, is releasing guilt and shame, and the grief and anxiety, because those are your starting points. I mean, there's so much love and so much light, and we don't want to see you trapped. We want to see you moving forward to the life. Thank you.
Great. And one of the phrases that you mentioned was our first memories. I want to go back to it's our first body experiences, right? Our first emotional soul experiences. So many of us experience trauma in utero. One of the therapies that I've experienced as part of healing my trauma is a version of rebirthing. So there's a in utero time. It's in the water, so like swirling around, like in the warm, salty water, right? Our mother. And being held so tightly, the birth canal, and then getting born and being wanted and loved. So getting a somatic experience of that as adults, to repattern what happened as kids for so many of us that didn't experience that. I mean, we hear when we're in utero, people that are yelling or screaming, we hear that, and we experience layers of trauma. If our mother is scared or doesn't want us, all those things, we're in the biochemistry of our mother. So all those things impact us. Yeah. And Karen's got something to share, and then Dr. Lincoln.
Yes, so true, Laureli. And I believe the eggs are formed in utero for the next generation too. And our cells hold memory. And so that trauma just gets passed down and passed down before you're ever even conceived, which just gave me tingles. Yeah, there's so much to that. Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to jump on, I believe, what Jenn was saying about with forgiveness as well. Forgive me, I'm going to butcher a quote, but somebody said holding on to anger is like taking poison for yourself and hoping that person dies, something along those lines. And so when I work with my clients, that's one thing I talk about. It's like when you're holding on to the hurt, the anger, whatever that emotion is that you're allowing to stew and fester in your body, and it's towards somebody else or towards yourself, and some things as well, you're hurting yourself. So when you enter into a space of forgiveness, you actually stop hurting yourself. It's not about the other person. It's about loving yourself so much that you are ready to step out of holding that emotion in place, that trauma in place, in that way of keeping it alive and allowing it to continue to further hurt you. And, you know, I've compared it to taking your own power back, in that when you forgive them, it's like you stop giving them the power to impact you. And, you know, we work through emotional release techniques, and that's something you can find, you know, on the internet, or I'm sure many of us can help with that. But, you know, removing those emotions and the weight and the responses to those emotions, and then allowing that true forgiveness of, I'm not going to participate in this any longer. I'm not going to allow them to hurt me, is such a beautiful way of that forgiveness. So it has nothing to do with, you know, as people have said, it has nothing to do with like forgetting that they did it. It doesn't mean because you've forgiven them, you let them back into your life, or you allow them to do the same habits and behaviors and patterns and abuse or whatever it is. It's more of stepping into your self-sovereignty of, I'm not going to let that person impact me in this way anymore. And that forgiveness is that letting go and allowing yourself to take that next step in the healing process.
Yes. I want to mention that I'm putting in the chat. I put in the chat a few times. If you're willing to share your feedback with us today, we have a feedback form. And if you give us your email address, we'll put you in a drawing for a free 30-minute session with one of us of your choice. We'll also be able to contact you with our specials and all those great things. You're welcome to just give us feedback and not leave your email address as well. And I don't think anyone's in line to ask a question, which is fine. I love the conversation today. We're doing great things. It's going to be hugely of service to have this up and available for more people. If you are wanting to ask a question of the panel, a specific question, and get feedback from each of us, please let me know in the chat. We do request you pay first. And if you have paid and I don't know and you're not in line, please let me know. We want to get you up here. All right, we've got Dr. Joe and then Dr. Lincoln.
Did you want to go, Lincoln?
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a kind of an example, a little story. I have a client, and this is the story of how backwards this works. I have a client who's a real people pleaser, and he grew up traumatized as a child for, you know, various good reasons, physically and emotionally, mostly emotionally, abandonment, stuff like that. And he has two ways of fulfilling himself. One is by going to the gym and working out, very somatic. And the other is by binge drinking and getting shit-faced drunk and feeling like shit the next day. And one of these things he likes, and the other thing he doesn't like. So he wants to get rid of the drinking, and he wants to know how. And it's funny because, you know, he's a people pleaser. He's a nice guy. People love him, but he doesn't feel good about himself. So I said to him, you know, you feel like you're a piece of shit. You think you're worthless. And just saying that really resonated with him. And it was like really liberating, because all the people that he deals with, he's such a nice guy and everything's wonderful and he makes everybody so happy. No one would ever tell him that. And I just told him that, you know, you act like you think you're shit. And it was so enlivening to him. It was like, oh my God, I can feel like I'm a piece of shit and it doesn't matter. I don't have to be liked by everybody, and I don't have to be the center of attention, and I don't have to make everybody think I'm great. And it sort of took the weight off him. And so that's a kind of backwards way of recognizing that to get out from under the weight, you sort of have to see what the weight is. And I don't know, maybe he was just ready to admit it at some point. He just to let it go. And I feel like he's about to, it's like a seed that's germinated. He's about to sprout. And he's been locked into this positive image of himself through this iron mask of being a nice, happy guy, which he wasn't. And now that he can say, I'm not a happy guy, I'm not a good, it's like, okay, I can just leave it, forget it, I don't need it anymore. And now I said to him, be selfish, do stuff for yourself. Don't feel like you always have to redeem yourself, because you don't need to. And that kind of, and now I think he feels much better. And I think our work might be done. Simple step into a different sense of self. That was just my story. So, Dr. Joe, there you go.
Thanks, Dr. Lincoln. Dr. Joe's next.
Thanks. I was just going to talk about, we were talking about forgiveness, and I wanted to mention how a lot of my clients, and it was difficult for myself too. First, you need to be able to get angry with whoever it is that hurt you. And I know for a lot of people, especially if the person is your parents or caregiver, because we have a need, especially as children, to put them on a pedestal because our life depends on them. So when we're older and we're thinking about the ways that we've been hurt or neglected, whatever, it takes a while to be able to get angry because we really want to protect them. And I know a lot of clients will say to me, they'll start to talk about their parents, and they'll kind of be like, but they were great parents and they did this. And I always say, I know that, I recognize that your parents were great. They did everything that they could. And I also recognize they went through their own trauma too. So it's important to understand that by talking about the hurt that you have by your caregiver, your parents, you're not betraying them, and it's not going to cause them any harm. But it's important to validate your own truth, your own story, by sharing the hurt that you have. And it's okay to get angry at your parents. And that can be a very hard thing to do because it feels like you're betraying them, feels like you're pulling away from them. And so that whole thing is a process too. And until you do that, you can't really move towards a step of forgiveness and moving on. So just wanted to mention that that's a really hard thing to do too.
Maybe I should say a lot of people recommend going to forgiveness before feeling anger. And I, like you, completely agree that being able to feel angry, being able to me, anger is yes and no, it's boundaries. So it's honoring ourselves. And it's so important to do that before we jump into forgiveness of someone else. For me, it's not true forgiveness. And it also overrides ourselves, and it actually causes more trauma.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, someone had asked a question earlier, and I wonder if maybe we have something to say about that. Carol had asked, once you have experienced PTSD, post-traumatic stress, well, not PTSD, post-traumatic stress, whether it be in your teens or early adult life, and they may mean trauma too. If you experience some sort of amnesia due to that post-traumatic stress, how long will it take for one to get past it with no type of counseling? So we've sort of addressed that question, but maybe I'll say if we do nothing, it doesn't have to be counseling, but if we do nothing to, in whatever way, face and feel what's here, it can be very gentle facing. If we don't allow the feelings that are here and whatever's stored in our bodies to emerge and to flow, to me, we don't get past it. We're still in it. So anyone else, if there's anything they want to say about that? I know, Henry, you've got your hand up, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw this as well, and I'm so glad, Laureli, that you're pulling this into the conversation, because this is so interesting. This harks back to the idea of the time heals all wounds. And I don't know if time heals all wounds or if time is the major, most important factor. I'm not all knowing, of course. But I think of it, so that the image that came to me was a building. Like you're in the city and there's a building. Well, how long will it take for that building to go away? It may be eventually, but certainly not in my lifetime. And I think not in the lifetime of the person who is not doing anything about it. It's like literally there's just this building. And when I say building, I mean neural network, to get back to what I was talking about earlier, the neural network. What happened, whether you have forgotten or not, or haven't forgotten, first of all, it's in your body. So the memory is in your body. And the memory is also there. It's just not accessible to you. But just because it's not in the circle of your conscious awareness doesn't mean you don't come from this memory. Doesn't mean that this memory doesn't influence your actions and reactions, your views, your perception, even the very shape of your reality is influenced and guided by this, whether you know or not. And so when you think about it this way, that a neural network is permanent. So I'm going to say that again, a neural network is permanent. As long as your brain is alive, you will have that neural network. So undoubtedly, it will take some doing. What shape that doing takes depends. Some things work better for some people. It's sometimes, like I took therapy with a former Jesuit monk, and because I had anxiety around my mother's death. And literally in the very first session, he said something, couldn't even tell you what it was. He said something, clicked a realization, and I was completely freed from 4 decades of suffering over my mom's death. This had not happened. So this is the point that I'm trying to make, and then I'm going to wrap it up. 4 decades of working, of training, taking 250 hours of life coaching training, being a Reiki master, working with clients, talking with people, working with practitioners. 4 decades, nothing. And then seeing this former Jesuit priest, such a good vibe for me, in one session, completely undid it and never came back. So yes, something I would recommend doing something.
Great, thank you, Henry. Just one other comment I want to insert in here too is that my understanding is that whenever something is too hard, too traumatic, that our being doesn't know how to be with in a set of ways, we turn off memory or cut off memory or block memory or amnesia, temporary, permanent, whatever format, to protect ourselves. It's a strategy for protecting ourselves. And Henry, I want to ask you a question maybe just before we go on. I know we've got Angela and Dr. Joe online. You said that neural networks are permanent. Do you mean they're permanent until they change, or do you see them as fixed and not changing? We all have different perspectives, so we're all...
Yeah. So it's yes and both. What's there is there, and it will always be there. That doesn't mean you can't add to the neural network, and it doesn't mean that the neural network can't fall into disrepair. That was the idea with the ping pong, with the what's it? It's not ping pong. It's the pinball. The idea with the pinball, that what fires together wires together, so it's strong, right? So when you don't use this neural network all the time, then other neural networks are more in use and you're more likely to default to them. But this also is why it can happen that you go for 20 years and something doesn't get activated, and a perfect storm occurs and you go, it looks to me like I haven't learned anything. But that's not the case. It's just that you revisited, you reactivated a very, very old neural network. So yes, you can't change. It's sort of like when you make a road, the road will always be there, but you might be running a bridge parallel to it, or like a 4 up level of roads, or a super highway over here, one that curves under and over. It's just so you can change the landscape, you can change the picture, but that thing is always going to be with you.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have.
It's great. Just like not using labels for ourselves beyond when they're helpful. What you're saying may be biologically, literally true. And I know for me, I just offer this for everyone as an option. If building the highway and imagining building the highway as a replacement is a helpful idea, use that. And
yes,
if some old thing comes up and the connection is still there, not to shame ourselves or blame ourselves because it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and not to think that we have regressed or that we didn't grow or didn't learn.
Part of the layers of the healing journey. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Angela,
amazing.
Angela, and then Dr. Joe, and then Jen.
Hi, to answer the question, it can take you up to 1 to 2 years for the brain to get back to being, let's say, unfried. Because when you do experience a traumatic experience, or let's say PTSD, or even you're in a relationship with someone that's narcissistic, it can take you at least a year or two to get your brain back to normal. It can fry the circuits. And why it's so important to heal from trauma is I'll give you 2 examples. There was one story I remember hearing that I thought was really profound, and it was about a young teenage boy. And he was being observed for behaviors. And when he was in this one classroom, he would always have behaviors come up, behaviors. And the therapist that was watching him realized that the teacher wore the same exact body cologne scent his father wore. And his father was a raging alcoholic who was abusive. So as soon as he asked the teacher to change that cologne to not wear it, all behaviors went away. All behaviors, which really tells you about how the sense of smell works. Another one I remember hearing was a married couple, very, very, very happy. And one night he decided to make banana splits. And he said to his wife, oh, you're not a really big chocolate fan. I guess you're not going to want hot chocolate on it. Well, long story short, the police ended up coming out because she lost it. And when she was working with a therapist, exploring, her childhood trauma and everything, she realized that why that was such a big trigger for her is her mom body shamed her all the time. And her mom loved to eat hot fudge sundaes. And her mom would always make comments that, well, you can't have so much hot sauce, chocolate sauce, because you need to watch your weight. And she would always just make her feel so bad. So just by him making that slight comment, not even aware that that was a trigger point for her, the cops were called out. And so she had to really work on that. That had nothing to do with him. He wasn't body shaming her. He was just doing something, nice, making her a hot fudge sundae, but it was, interconnected. That trauma was interconnected to it. And so those are some things, to kind of think about when we lose it, when we lose our cool, because we can lose our cool if by hearing someone raise their voice. We just raise their voice and you think they're yelling at you, but they're not yelling at you. They just raise their voice. But it could be the tone of their voice or the sound of their voice. You could look at a person and they remind you of your ex, and that can be traumatizing. You let's say you got attacked by a dog, a certain kind of, breed of dogs. And when you see those dogs anytime, your body reacts, you jump, you flinch, you get startled. So there's all different ways that our body responds, but we can be completely unaware by that. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there for, some people to, grasp that concept is there's many ways. And when we don't address the things that triggered us or understand it, some people might think you're crazy because you're reacting a certain way that you normally wouldn't behave or react. And it could be totally associated to a trauma that you had when you were younger, but you totally forgot. And you just didn't have that life experience until 20 years later. So just kind of wanted to, throw that out for some people. So.
Yeah, all kinds of things connected that we're not consciously aware or connected until we get conscious awareness of it. And that's, I mentioned earlier, and it's great to have it linked up with what you're saying now. The patterns in people's eyes, the energy in people's eyes can trigger us, can prompt us, and we just don't know. And I know a few of you want to share, and then maybe after that, Someone in the chat is putting some tools that are helpful for addressing trauma and being with trauma. So I'd love for us to wind towards that more. But go ahead and let's see, we've got Dr. Joe and then Jen. Share whatever you want to share, and then we'll start winding that direction. We've been sharing some tools already, and we'll share more tools and more of the alternative types of tools that we all use. So go ahead, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that because we were talking about kind of repressed memories, amnesia, and our psyche will never give us more than we can handle, because sometimes diving into this work can be really scary. So I always tell people that, because you know, as you maybe start working on trauma, or you know, memories happen to come, and sometimes memories won't come, and that's also because it's your psyche protecting you. Yeah, you never get more than you can handle at a time. And also, in terms of how long does it take to recover from trauma or PTSD, that again, it can be a lifetime. It can be something that you sort of, the symptoms may decrease, but there can always be triggers that will sort of cause the same kind of brain reaction. And you may be able to respond differently, where you won't go right into the fight or flight, but you may also, you may have the same thoughts, the same kind of panic, but you won't physically react the same way, or you won't have the same behaviors. So, because with trauma, there are brain changes in terms of the frontal lobe and the amygdala and the brainstem. So those changes can be permanent. And it's just a matter of learning how to use tools like breathing techniques, you know, meditation, mindfulness, things like that, to interrupt the automatic behavior patterns and emotional patterns, to interrupt that. So, and certainly if you don't do any intervention, then it takes a lot longer, and some of those patterns won't be interrupted because you don't have the tools and the ability to learn how to react differently. And I think a lot of people don't feel like they deserve to get help, or maybe don't know how to ask for help. And everybody deserves to get help, and everybody deserves to heal. So I encourage everybody who's listening, if you haven't reached out for help, or if you don't feel like you deserve it, really you do. Everyone deserves healing. And there are plenty of people who really want to offer you that help. So please do reach out. We all want that for you. So yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Joe. Jen.
Hi. So I can address the, you know, from my experience, and everybody's right. You know, it takes time. And for me, it was a couple of years, but, you know, there were times where I got into the therapy and I wasn't ready to move. It was too traumatizing. So we kind of stepped forward and back and forward for a little bit. So, you know, during that as well, you know, he made a beautiful point. He said, you know, he was teaching me, we were learning, you know, so when I got to a point where I couldn't move past that trauma for a little bit, we moved on to relationships. And like I was saying before, he said the most beautiful thing to me. He said, you know, this is our subconscious mind. When you're attracted to those people, you know, it's your subconscious mind. It's trying to get you back to that. He said, this is why you're attracting these people, because your subconscious is bringing you back to that point of healing the original wound that you have within yourselves. And that has been so true for me. You know, I do different things in my healing. So, you know, I did the therapy. I did, you know, so I went to sweat lodges. I've gone to a lot of different things, and I get massage. I get reflexology. You know, I still do that. And he taught me what my triggers were. So for me, I had the worst PTSD that I've ever seen with anybody. I was on medications. I was, you know, just couldn't function as a person. And he got me to the point that I'm off all my medicines, that I knew what my triggers were, and that they stopped. I knew I was healed when I stopped having that response to those triggers. And it is not an overnight instant thing. I had to do so many different things, because when you get stuck on something, you need to move over here and try this here. One of the things I learned with being a Tao Hands practitioner, which, you know, that's all about transforming the negative messages in your body, spirit, soul, everything to positive. And it was funny because my acupuncturist told me the same thing. Amazing Chinese guy. They taught us about the yin and the yang and the 5 elements. And he said, you have a really angry liver. And he's like, that's a yin organ. And you know, you need to keep them in balance. And the other one's your gallbladder. And it was really funny. And he's like, yeah, but you know, to tie everything in, he said it's a wood element. You need to do blessings for your wood element, which is your liver, your gallbladder, tendons, nails, eyes, and it ties in with anger, you know, and so does the fire element as well, which is your heart, any small intestines, blood vessels, your tongue, your taste, and it ties into depression, anxiety, excitability. So I do blessings with that, you know, as well. And you know, I did end up having my gallbladder removed, and my anger did end up having issues because I went to the doctor. I'm like, I am kind of feeling a little off. So we were able to tie it in. And, you know, what I learned, which was an amazing tool and nobody taught me, but it was a trauma response, was decompartmentalizing, just like stepping out of my body. So, you know, when I would have these experiences, you know, before I was 100% healed, I'd come and I would step out of myself. Now I would be fully aware of myself, but I couldn't connect to the emotions. So I became the analyzer and I was able to analyze without feeling. And so for me, my therapist and I, later on, I made it a tool. So, you know, when I go and I'm doing some healings with people and, you know, I connect from the heart. I'm very heart-centered, as most of us here are, you know, and so for me, I'm able to step out, be physically present, and help my clients as well. So you can turn what's happened to you into a healing tool as well. And I've learned that really, really well. So like I said, you know, you might take a year, you might take a month, you know, I guess on a linear timeline, there isn't one. You know, we're all at our own paths and our own times, and there's no wrong time. You might see this person's healed in 4 months, or you might see this person's healed in 4 years, or you might see this person is just stabilized and can deal and be in a functional spot. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, wherever you are, just honor that, you know, and if something's not working for you, move to something else. You know, I like the multi approach. I liked having the therapist, and, you know, we were always shamed about going to them. But I found somebody, like I said, worked with Carl Jung. He knew the Mandela. He worked with so many different tools. He actually set up one of the first schools of thought, like in, you know, in the Village in New York. And I actually did an interview with my therapist for my college, and he had such an amazing life, you know, and he's like, yeah, I got a yurt out here. I do healing sessions too. And he firewalked and he worked with crystals. And it's like, you know, finding a therapist that does those things that resonate with you is really, really a blessing. So, you know, Dr. Lincoln and Angela and everybody here, you know, on behalf of people and they're traumatized, it's just an amazing gift that you guys have too, because, you know, it's so hard. Like when you walk into a therapy office, automatically you're going to feel judged. It just is, you know, it just happens and you're just kind of in your shell. But if you can find, as a client, you find that connection with the therapist as a healer, as someone who can, a facilitator, you know, you don't want, and not have the transference, of course, you know, they're not going to be your dad and they're not going to be your mom, but they're going to be here to support you and walk you through, you know, and that's an amazing tool to have. So thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Jan. There was appreciation for you in the chat. I've continued to put the practitioner's information in the chat, everyone also, with all of our specials. And I would mention, I put in the chat that animals are healing. And one of the newer modalities that's very helpful for people is working with horses. Horses are so, they perceive emotions so deeply, connect so deeply, and they help us face when we're not connecting with our emotions. So yeah, just new forms of therapy getting created all the time. Hannah, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I just want to add to, because the idea of reaching out for help can just feel overwhelming at first, and you might be worried about picking the right person. Sometimes you might want to look at, is there a certain modality? Do you want to do therapy? Do you want to do theta healing? Have you heard of Reiki? Did your friend of a friend have a good experience with a certain type of modality? And you can start your search that way. Allow yourself to be led by what feels good in your body. If you can't talk about it, if there's trauma, if you don't remember it, maybe you want to start with some body work, acupressure, massage, acupuncture. Everything is stored in our body, and there is only one way to access it. So if you start with the intention that that's what you want to do, is heal yourself or have more emotional and energetic healing, just find an avenue that feels easy for you. Some of my clients that I work with, we don't talk. They let me know kind of like the brief couple sentences when we get on Zoom, and then I'll do Reiki or energy clearing for them. It's find somebody that makes you feel comfortable so that you can go back. There's no judgment, there's no shame. And if you do feel judgment or shame, find somebody that you feel comfortable with saying, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. Great, let's work through that, because I'm just proud of you for even showing up. I'm proud of you for booking the call in the first place. And I know that I'm not, and I keep saying but that's how I feel with my clients, and that's how you should feel with whoever you're working with. And if you don't feel that, and I do want to take a second and say, just take a couple breaths and ask yourself, is it the practitioner that I feel uncomfortable with? Or am I just scared because this is a scary thing? It is a huge step, but it doesn't have to be. So if you can start to allow yourself to make that distinction, then it's like, okay, if I take my fear out of it, knowing that I might feel uncomfortable saying what I need to say to anybody, you allow yourself to find the person or the technique that you can open up to. And I mean, acupuncture, so I do my, all the energy healing modalities as well. But I recently had a huge breakthrough with acupressure. There was a point along my sternum that wasn't releasing. And by releasing that, I'm not going to go into, I don't study acupressure, so I don't want to do damage to the modality and say anything that's incorrect. But on myself, I was able to do that. And with the help of just acupressure, she was able to actually explain to me the importance of those points along my chest. And in doing so, it opened up a new paradigm for me. It allowed a lot of the healing I've been doing over the last couple months to actually fully integrate. So I just want to really put that out there to you guys, is you don't have to always talk through things. You can start gently. You can start in any way that feels good to you, including free YouTube videos and meditations that people have. Explore modalities online for free. Many of us have free discovery calls. Sign up, talk to them. If you don't like them, that's okay. Ask them, hey, I didn't feel like we were a super good fit. They'll refer you to somebody else, because they're going to remember they want you to feel safe. I want my clients to feel safe and respected. And I don't know what trigger they might be experiencing with me. Then maybe after they work with somebody else, they can help them clear that. And they don't have, it's not on them to explain that to me. I honor where everyone is at. So I'm going to stop talking now, because I feel like I might have gotten off topic, but I see other hands up.
It's great. You're doing great. I'm going to insert some more things, and then we've got Karen and Henry. Let's see. So one is, I realized someone said something a while back that I want to come back to and say a little differently too. Well, on the one hand, I agree that our psyche won't open to things we're not ready to be with. If watching a YouTube video or an experience being with a practitioner or anything in life happens that feels too big and we don't know how to be with that, find support, get support. It might not be the best person for you. It gets some support so you're not alone, and then go to a better person and a better process. And if you feel ready to engage and to open to whatever trauma might have been here and you don't know what it is, all you have to do is literally ask, or energetically ask the universe, say, I'm ready to be with this. I'm ready to open and to heal, to unwind. And our openness will allow it in. Part of what I do with people is help them feel feelings more deeply. I realized in the last year I have autism, and so part of my journey, I also have talents in my eyes that don't naturally feel emotions as deeply as other people. And so it's been a journey for me to learn to feel feelings on my own, and trauma, like so much in the way, so many things. So one of my specialties is helping people feel angry in a way that's healthy. And I want to encourage everyone that anger doesn't have to be a great big thing. Simply saying, what happened to me was not okay. I'm worthy of better. I'm worthy of more. And even just the what happened to me was not okay. That's feeling anger in a way that's healthy and affirming of who we are. How anger does not have to be big and scary. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So we've got, did someone put their hand down? Someone put their hand down. Who had their hand up? I think there was someone. Oh, I know. It's just Hannah. Okay, there we go. Karen and then Henry. Okay, great. You're muted. Let's get you unmuted.
And all the profound things I just said. Actually, I was just saying, Laureli, what you just said about anger not needing to be big and scary. That was really profound. And I have seen so many people who have been scared to be angry because what does that lead to? And, like, how do you express it in a healthy way? And how do you not keep it within? So I wanted to recognize that, because that felt to me very, very important. You had mentioned earlier about talking through different ways of really like addressing the trauma and working through some of this. And someone had talked about nature, and absolutely, like, going into nature and grounding. There's forest bathing, and I want to kind of circle back and talk about, there are so many modalities available. And what I truly believe is really focusing in on listening to yourself and what feels aligned with you. Hannah was talking about, like, if you can't remember from your mental body, but your physical body is going to remember, start with the physical. There are yoga poses that open you up to release different emotions. There's acupuncture that can release different things, acupressure. And I don't have any experience with it, but I do know many people who have had wonderful results with plant medicines. Not something I do, but something I have seen incredible results from with others. Ceremonial ways of releasing things. The emotional release itself, identifying the emotions. So many of us don't even realize what emotions we're feeling, because we tend to focus it on like 5 main emotions, but really there's a plethora of emotions out there. And correctly identifying the emotions we're feeling and then releasing them, so that that's not reverberating around in our energetic fields. What happens to us also stays in our Akashic records. So that's another area, to really be focused on and released, and have that kind of released from our bodies. Cutting cords with people is an incredibly effective release as well. For the person who has caused whatever trauma to you, you can cut cords with that. You can cut cords with the event itself. Hypnosis does wonderful things. Having somebody who holds space for you allows you to listen and doesn't go, oh my God, that's terrible. Oh no. And then what did they do? Which sometimes is that empathetic response that we think we're helping, right? Because now we're empathizing. But what we're actually doing is almost deepening the trauma, because now we're adding our own projections and our own emotions onto what's already being held in their fields. So finding someone who can hold that space and listen and not project onto you what your process is or what you are experiencing, but really allowing you to kind of explore that and let it go as you explore through all of that, can be wonderfully, wonderfully healing. So again, I'm going to go back to, I think a multi-pronged approach can really help so much, because like the nature, the animals, the hand and body work and movement, and even turning on music to elicit certain responses. If you want to get angry and you can't feel angry, get angry music on and allow it to move out of your body. I can't tell you how many times I have used music to get me out of a certain place, because sometimes we have a hard time moving that stuff, So just I want to welcome the idea of really intermixing modalities, finding what feels good for you. And then once you go down that path, you might find you need to now start a new path because you've cleared in that area. So now it's time to introduce something else to peel off a new layer from that onion, to focus in on a different angle or a different layer. So there you have it.
Thanks so much, Karen. Great. Angry music. I love it. Henry next.
That was really great. Like, it's a great thing it's being recorded, because Karen, you mentioned so many different things. So that's really great. Let's see if I can add a few things, because we're in the phase of talking about tools. So wanted to hark back to the nature. Yes, so obviously nature is an amazing healer. Like when I feel out of sorts and I go to the forest, 15 to 5, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, and just the energy that I get there, the whatever the emanations are from the trees, that has an effect on me. I think of it in terms of their personalities, but it could also be vibrations. It could be exhalations, because they exhale. So it depends on how scientific you are, how metaphysical you are. You might think of it in different ways, but unquestionably something happens when you're surrounded by beings that are 3 times as old or 5 times or 10 times as old as we are, who have lived all this life and have the wisdom of life. At least that's the very least that I think is not unscientific to say. You can see I'm a little bit into science. I like to marry the magic and the science. And so that's definitely one of the things. So what came to my mind is that we have this idea that when something isn't working, that something has to stop or something has to change. And then we have this idea, something is going to stop that, and something is going to change that. And none of these things are as true as we might think. Yes, sometimes something will stop. Like, for example, if you hit somebody really hard, they may not do a certain thing again, but then you have to think about the unintended consequences. So if you want something to work, most likely that's going to be a process. So who you became now and what's happened to you in your life that you want to heal or become whole around, or like I like to say, in the experience of wholeness, is something that's going to be a process. And that means there's going to be some concentration and some focus required, not necessarily hard work, but certainly focus and concentration. And so along those, like with this in mind, there are a few things that I want to bring up. Is one is when you continue doing something that doesn't work for you. For example, I was in a relationship with someone I loved very deeply, who unfortunately was a touch narcissistic, and even a good amount of touch is too much. So they would yell at me and then I would yell at them, because I'm the kind of person where I won't take it. I have an older brother who tortured me. Nobody gets to do that to me ever again. So here we are, these titans clashing. And I asked my friend, who was in their late, much older than I am now, and for their wisdom. And what they said to me was, you can be angry, but you don't have to be angry for 30 minutes. You can be angry for 5.5 seconds or for 1.5 seconds, and no one will even know. And that was kind of magical to me, that I didn't need to stop doing something or change myself, because over and over I would say, I'm never going to have a fight with this person again. It's so pointless. And then, wow, you said, and here we go again, right? So once I realized that I can just shorten, truncate the time that I'm angry. That was quite magical. Another thing that's magical and how effective it is, and I'm sure you've heard of, well, if you haven't heard of it, it's out there in the universe. I'm sure there's someone who invented it. I don't know their name. It's the counting down from 5 to 1. So it's like, when I get to 1, then X will happen. So this is part of the IFTTT. If this, then that. This is from computer language and from programming language. If this, then that. So 5, 4, 2, 3, 2, 1. So once I get to that, so if this, that's the 1, then that's when I'm going to whatever. And so you just want to make sure that you only use that when you're really committed. Because if you count down from 5 to 1 and you don't do it, that's the end of the tool. It might survive it once or twice, but it won't survive it for very many times of breaking that pact, that if this, then that. So that's one of them. The other thing is, like, you can change location. Even getting up from your chair and sitting down on the couch can make a huge difference. Like, oh, new perspective, just shifts how you're being, because you're locked into the moment, and then this breaks you out of the moment. It's a new moment, and your body knows that. Oh, good. Of course, the deep breathing. And there's a couple of others. Again, going back to the IFTTT, if this, then that. So boundary setting, like, for example, if you don't, like somebody said in chat that they might be aggressive with their children, or they have a certain way of being with their children under certain conditions that they don't want to be. So you can say, okay, if I'm like this, so here's what happens, just real quick. Wow, there's so much downloads. So what happens is we tend to concentrate on the why. So, like, I am not as good to my dogs, or when they were alive, as I want to be. Like, I can get frustrated if they don't do what they're supposed to do. So then I'm saying to myself, okay, so if this, then that. If the dog does X, then I'm going to do this particular thing. So have that ready. Have ready, not like I'm going to react, or I'm not going to react like I used to. That doesn't work at all. That I'm not going to, or it's just the universe doesn't work that way. It only works in the affirmative. So just know that the universe only works in the affirmative. You can't say I'm not gonna. You can only say I'm gonna. So that's a way of working. If this, then that. And then, to me, my favorite in the world is sweet talking, because, like, you can reparent yourself, and how you can't overestimate what it's like when you sit down with yourself and you pet yourself and you're sweet, and, like, at first you don't even want to do it because it's, like, so weird, but then after a while you can get comfortable with being gentle and kind. You soften your voice and you speak sweet things to yourself. The healing power of that is astonishing. And there's a hurdle to overcome because it feels weird. But just know that your subconscious doesn't know it's you saying those things. It just knows it's heard those things. So that the sweet talking yourself and saying all the things you wish you'd been told, that's probably the most powerful tool that I've ever come across. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Someone wrote in chat, art and creative expression being a great way of releasing, shifting things. So I'm reminded too that so much of our trauma is pre-verbal, particularly, right, young kids. So we often might not have words for it. So simply sounding, movement and sound, whatever we notice in our body, just letting our hands move in a shape of whatever is happening in our body. Any way that we are kind of matching, honoring whatever we're feeling is a way of giving it space and releasing its expression. It is flow. All these kinds of things are helpful. It can be drawing, yeah, speaking, sounding, singing, all kinds of things. All right, Dr. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention creativity, any kind of expression, dancing, body movement, shaking, drawing, any kind of art is really useful. Painting, any kind of poetry. I like to write poetry, just kind of getting the words out on the page. Journaling, somebody had mentioned that in the chat. That's a very useful way to get out feelings, and to just kind of writing things out is very healing. Even like writing out your story can be helpful. And any kind of creative expression is really useful too, as a way to heal.
Was it being witnessed by anyone about whatever
Exactly.
way we allow it to move through us? Sometimes we do it in
Yeah.
private, and sometimes being witnessed. And just dreams in the chat, dreams and remembering dreams or interpreting dreams.
Yeah.
Like one way that I got in touch with my, one way that I knew as a kid, or maybe I should say I didn't know, but one way that I was gentle with myself as a kid, knowing that something was there, was repeating nightmares. So yeah, and it's a way of going back in and sorting out what might have happened, and like honoring and loving for ourselves of like something happened, even if we don't know what it is, and being gentle with ourselves, whatever that is. Yeah. All right, well, we're getting towards the end. Practitioners, anything else you want to share about just an opportunity in particular to make sure that we talk about just some different tools and some resources for people? I do all kinds of fear antidotes in the body when we talk about the word trauma, this topic of, right, early childhood trauma. All these kinds of things can bring up the layers of trauma and have us, as we said earlier, like not be as integrated in our body. So all kinds of tools are helpful for that, including, I know it's getting dark in my room. You've all seen me do this on panels a lot, like the sumo position, right? It's like going out and standing in the grass and connecting to the earth, right? Can be pushing up and down and feeling our lower body and touching ourselves, feeling connected with ourselves. All these kinds of things help bring us back and feel more safe, recognizing, looking around that we're safe right now, and that whatever memories are coming up are long ago. So regrounding in our safety in the moment. Go ahead, Dr. Lincoln, and then Dr. Joe's got more to add.
Since you asked for tools, I find myself doing a visualization with people often, even if it's not the first thing on my mind. And it is, a relaxation induced trance, which I do after I know something about them and their nature and their, goods and bads. And I take them visually to a place that's comfortable, or if not comfortable, exciting, or enlivening. And then I ask them to imagine, basically I start with a duality, who is the perpetrator and who is the hero? And often there's a third person. It's kind of like family, integrated family therapy, and where's yourself in this? Where's the child? And I ask them to play with these images and to grow them into a tangible form that we can speak with. And my ultimate goal, often, if possible, is to get them to all agree to work together so that they're not adversarial anymore. The perpetrator, the victim, and the injured one, or the protector. It's usually the protector, the injured one, the perpetrator, so that they can all dissolve the boundaries that keep them apart, sort of homogenize your personality into something that's whole, and sort of a plow under the negative and let it be, let it merge. So I'm actually asking the negative to agree to work, to see it as a positive and to see it as helpful, to reframe it. And I often wonder whether it's actually helping, but it seems to be where I'm led to. I mean, as a therapist, I think that you have to remind yourself, you're not here to succeed. You're just here to serve. You're not here to define what progress is or what needs to be done. I feel much like a horse. You direct me and I help you move in that direction. I pull your cart in that direction. I don't judge whether it's the right direction. I mean, horses often know what the right direction is, and I do open my mouth and put my foot in it. But nevertheless, still, I often try to get people to integrate whatever their energies are. because ultimately they're the ones who have to put it together. So that's a kind of tool, if you like.
Yep, great. Dr. Joe's got something else, and then Jen.
Yeah. Just some practical tools for grounding. One is to, if you're kind of dissociated or not feeling present, one is to name 5 things that you see. You can just look around and say, like, I see yellow walls, I see whatever objects, and then 4 things that you can hear, and you can talk about, or you can mention things that you hear outside of the room or things that you hear inside the room. And then 3 things that you can smell, perhaps, or that you can feel, like the clothes on your skin. And then 2 things that you can smell, either way. And then 1 thing that you can taste, like whatever tastes in your mouth. That brings you right back into the moment because you're using all of your senses. Another thing that you can do, like Laureli mentioned, is just like plant your feet on the earth and just really kind of ground yourself, and even imagine roots growing down into the earth. And then a couple of breathing techniques that are useful is to inhale for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 6. So just anytime you exhale longer than the inhale, you're slowing down your nervous system and slowing down your heart rate. And another one is called box breathing, and they actually teach this to soldiers with PTSD. So and I always just kind of imagine a box, and I use the color red too, because that helps visually. So you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4, and just kind of repeat that pattern. It's a nice way to keep your mind occupied, and it just soothes the nervous system too. So thank you.
Something I wanted to mention from what you said, and someone just wrote something related in the chat. If any of these tools don't help and they actually are more triggering, that's okay. Don't use those tools. Like, and the thing that you said that brought it up for me was when you mentioned like roots into the ground. I know, like, I was trapped in some ways as a child, and so anything that made me fixed and immobile would bring up more trauma. Or for some people, different kinds of breathing, or like whatever, colors, or all kinds of things can bring things up. So of all the tools, for everyone that's listening, all the tools we're mentioning, use the ones that work, and don't force yourself to use ones that don't work. Right. And so someone asked, what if your environment is causing problems? Change your environment. Find environments that have you feel safe. Right. Find a place of safety. Find a place where you feel integrated and embodied, and crawl out from there. Go slowly. Go at a pace that has you feel safe, whatever that is. Yeah. For everyone.
Yeah. And one more thing about the breathing is, it's breathing techniques can be triggering, because it's, if you think that you have to do it a certain way. So oftentimes it's helpful to work with someone who does breath work. So that's just another tip too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. All right, cool. And then Jen.
I was just going to share, like, I had posted some of the things in there that helped for me, when with my anxiety, doing the frequencies. Some people can do them, some people can't. Some of them are too high, some are too low. I've experienced, it's just like you said, finding that right area. For me, when my anxiety was so bad I didn't want to leave the house, I started finding a safe spot, a safe place in my house, and I made that my area to go to. So, you don't necessarily have to leave your house. Just build yourself I call it like a nest. And I would do a lot of cocooning. So what I would do is I just get these nice warm blankets and wrap it around me like a cocoon and be in that special area, shut off the stimulation, shut off the phone, shut off the computers, and just be held in that safe space, and then I would move from that. So that's, some of the things that helped with me. And also going outside, like, just putting your back against a tree. That for me, that helped out. Having something tangible in my hands, like my dragons, my dragon crystals, just holding something, having that connection to something. Even if you do something like that with anything, you could use it like a ball, the tension balls. I do a lot of drumming, and when I'm doing the meditations, I like to do the ones with drumming. That's for me the connection that I have. So definitely for that. Those are just like what I use, and if you're, some people are okay with being touched. It took me a long time to, not to be able to have people touch me, and just kind of doing the exercises to make yourself comfortable in your skin and go snail places, maybe a handshake one day, maybe whatever it is that fits for you, and then going out from there. So I used a lot of aromatherapy. I have essential oils, and the one thing, and like I said, you do it for yourself. One of the major things that actually helped me, and this is my experience, and I have some friends that did have the same experience, is using the Bach rescue remedy. There's the one for stress, and it's an amazing, it stops the oxidative stress, and it's just like it's the rescue remedy. I think it's called the emergency one, if I'm not mistaken, but it's really, really good, and it works, and it enabled me to stop right there and be able to do, like, because sometimes when you're out there, I couldn't concentrate because my anxiety was so bad, even just to count. And I was having severe breakdown panic attacks, but that was able to stabilize me and get me into that point where I can move forward. So, like everybody said, use what works for you. Don't try to force yourself to use something because not everything works for everybody. Just be aware of your body. If you start to feel anxiety or anything like that, then it's not for you at that time. Maybe there's something about that that triggers you. So find something else. If you like birds, just staring at the birds and, just relaxing, focusing on that. So there's lots of different things that you can do. The meditation, the music, the drumming, I do healing circles. So, with the drumming. So I do a lot of stuff like that. And it's helped me too, even on a personal level.
Just saying
You're-
yes, great. So we've reached the end of our panel. So let's go through, I think, Jen, what you're sharing is just a great opportunity to get us started in our checking out. So I've put all the practitioners' information in the chat again. So if you want, you can reach out to any of us. I put our upcoming online and in-person events. And so practitioners, let's go around and share again who you are, what you do, and how people can get in touch with you. Share your contact info so it's here in the video when people watch later. So go ahead, Jen, why don't you start us off after you're just sharing?
Okay, so Jennifer, Reiki master, dragon healer. I do spirit drumming in our sessions for trauma. My website is the www.shenlongilluminate.com. My phone number, you can text, call, whatever's comfortable for you, the 717-658-7273. And I have, it's easy, probably to spell, Phoenix Flame 75j@gmail.com, and my website is the www.shenlongilluminate.com. So
And maybe
you can reach out there.
And they say maybe
yeah.
spell your website so it's in the
Yeah, let me do that. I'll definitely do that. It's a little unique one, so yeah, I can do that here. And
speak it so it's in the video. I've got it in the chat.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. You want to, what did you say? I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll go ahead. I'm going to spell it. It's ShenLongilluminae.com. Great. Who wants to go next? All right, I call on you. Okay, go ahead, Karen, and then maybe Angela. Go ahead.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Karen Coccia. That's KarenCoccia.com is my website. I am a quantum healer, a multidimensional mentor, and a soul alignment coach. I'm trained in a number of different healing modalities. I'm a natural intuitive and a star seed, and my mission is to empower others to experience their own power, all that is possible in their lives and their bodies, physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness, and connection. I connect energetically with my clients, and we run sessions very much in a conversational way, though there are times where we are quiet and it's more energetics. I tap into your body and listen to you, and really we work together to clear the trapped emotions, collapse Akashic records, cut cords, reset patterns and beliefs, and really get you back to who you came to be in this life. So again, my name is Karen Coccia, and it's been such a pleasure and such an honor being on this panel tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Karen. I was suggesting Angela next and then Hannah.
Hi, I'm Angela Myers, and I am a clinical certified hypnotherapist. I've been doing that for a little over 20 years. I am an author, an NLP practitioner, a wellness coach, and I work with people all over the globe in many different forms and practices. So you can find me at undetectednarcissist.com. I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, those social media platforms. And I also have a blog post and I have a podcast as well. So I know a few people talked about narcissism in here. So if you want to know about trauma bonding or direct trauma, indirect trauma, fear of dating another narcissist, anything around those areas, there's a bunch of free information on the podcast and on the blog posts that I have as well. So I'm very happy people were here today and we got a lot of good information out there from everyone, and I'm very happy to be part of this group. So everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Angela. We've got Hannah next, and then Henry, and then Lincoln, and then Dr. Joe.
Hi, so I'm Hannah with Holistic Healing by Hannah. And so my website is holistichealingbyhannah.com. HOLISTICHEALINGBYHANNAH. The hardest part of that is my name because some people don't spell Hannah with 2 H's. So I'm a medical intuitive, and I help you connect to your body so you can reconnect with your inner child and hear the messages that your body and soul are trying to tell you. Because when we experience trauma or disconnection as a child, we disconnect from ourselves, and a lot of times that can manifest into physical ailments. So I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. You say Henry, yeah, go ahead.
I'm Henry India Holden at henryindiaholden.com. And I am an eco-spiritual life coach. I trained 250 hours of life coaching as a transformational life coach, but I'm not so much into transformation anymore because, yeah, that's another story. And I'm also a tarotist. I do tarot readings, but not divination. It is more using it as an amazing visualization tool for the imagination to come and help us work things out and work through things. And I'm also an author of The World is Better Than You Think and of Crafting a Happy Life, available on Amazon. And I am the creator of the Mystics Tarot and Oracle cards. So I work with people more often than not who have something that they want to accomplish in life, and for some reason it's not happening. They might not know what their purpose is, or they might have some blocks around it, or things like that. So I love to work with people who like to make a difference and to help them get this big bang for the buck. You can hit me up for a 30-minute free conversation where we can find out whether I can be useful to you, whether what I have to offer works for you, and whoever you are, if that's in my wheelhouse. And you can email me at henry@henryhello.com and say, hey, I'd love to take you up on that free 30-minute conversation, and then I'll send you a link and we'll set you up for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Henry. I think Dr. Lincoln is next.
I work with people who seem to want to change. I insist that people direct me. I am a psychotherapist. I tend to look for where your strengths are, and I think of people as having an intellectual aspect to their personality and emotional aspect to their personality. a neurological aspect to their personality, which we often don't recognize because it's underneath, which is to say our ability to attend and focus, release, and attract neurologically. And the spiritual, which is to say your purpose, and your function and your ability to change others. A lot of people find strength in realizing their value in the world. It gives them strength from themselves. So I'm at mindstrengthbalance.com. I also have a blog that's free and another one that's not. Mindstrengthbalance.com. And I'll speak to you for, a free discovery call. It's all on the website. So that's it. I wish you well.
Thanks, Dr. Lincoln. Dr. Joe's next.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joe. I'm a former psychologist, currently working as a somatic healer and women's holistic coach and yoga, Pilates, mindfulness meditation teacher. My website is tulasoul.com, TULASOUL.com. And I offer individual sessions with coaching, and also I do individual yoga sessions. So I would love to help out, and I offer free consultation sessions as well. And I'm just grateful to have been on this panel tonight with everyone, and grateful to have met some of you, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think everyone else is gone. And I'm Laureli Shimayo. I'm an intuitive eye reader, body psychology coach, and matchmaker. Read your eyes, read your soul, read your body, help you get more aware of who you are, appreciative of who you are, flow and release who you are, and express your purpose in the world. Help you make decisions that are in alignment with that. You can learn more about my intuitive eye readings at intuitiveeyereading.com and matchmakingsoulmates.com if you want to connect with a conscious partner, a soulmate. And we have tons more events happening at MeWe fairs. For example, tomorrow we have our free online fair with 16 practitioners from 5 to 9 p.m. Pacific time in the same Zoom room, jointhefair.com. Some of the practitioners here tonight are in the fair tomorrow. And then we have the Witches Familiar and Animal Communication panel coming up next Tuesday. Saturday, March 4, we have a Metaphysics and Intuition practice circle. So if you want to practice your intuition, you're opening your intuition in various ways, come practice whatever modalities, or simply come practice your intuition. We are all potentially intuitive. And we have another panel opening to possibilities coming up March 5. Our next in-person fairs are in Linwood, March 18-19, then in Portland, March 25-26, and we'll be in Eugene, May 6 and 7. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for all of us holding space and sharing resources and support with each other and with all the people that hopefully will be watching our video. Our YouTube channel is there in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you all creating safe space. Thank you for working with technology in a new way so that we have safer space, in particular for this theme, this panel. Thanks again. MeWeFairs.com, MEWEFAIRS.com.